So, Rav Cardozo, I want to ask you a very important question. I think it's actually a very relevant question to a lot of people because the topic of love and romance is one of the most spoken about and written about topics in all of music, poetry, art, film, and philosophy. So I want to ask you about soulmates. I'm going to give you two options. I'm sure there's 10, 20, 30 different options of attitudes towards soulmates, and share your thoughts on it. Some people believe that there is this concept of one soulmate that you have been sent to this world with, and your souls, break apart, and you have to find them, and there's one. So that's on one side, and then there's another perspective and attitude, which is you can develop love with someone, you can make it work. And Erich Fromm, you mentioned before, a great psychologist and philosopher who made a book called The Art of Loving, and his main point in the book was it's an art that you can work towards creating a loving relationship, and it is not something passive. So which do you feel is a more accurate description of love? The soulmate approach, which is someone's destined for you, which has a very religious and spiritual connotation, or on the other hand, that you are part of creating that love with them, and in many ways it's an active relationship rather than something that's meant to be.
Yeah. I believe in a soulmate, but not in the traditional way how religious people normally see it. Something like, even though I have to admit that the Gemara seems to indicate that there is one person waiting for you somewhere, which 40 days before you even, how do you say in English, the conceivement has taken place, is already destined for you. I don't know if we should take that literally, or that this is just a beautiful way of saying things. The Gemara is full of these kind of statements, which I don't think we all have to take them literally, but there is meaning behind it, no doubt. I do believe that there are some people in this world who are more soul-mate-like for us than others. We cannot marry everybody and then develop love accordingly. There are some people who just don't fit me, and I don't fit that person. And to marry that kind of a person who is completely outside this soulmate condition is probably disastrous. But it may quite well be that I have got hundreds of soulmates, and I could in principle choose. And then, indeed, that is important, as Erich Fromm says, you have to develop it. But there must be, in my opinion, also from my experience, there must be a foundation of love to start with, which may not be very intensive, but a likeness to the other person from the very first moment that you meet that person. And then you have to work on it, that it starts to grow and starts to become better and deeper. Yes, that is possible. We see this actually, now that we are speaking about it, with Yitzchak and Rivka, right? He takes her into the tent, and then it says in the Torah that he loves her, meaning to say that he develops love for her. But there must be something to start off with. If there's absolutely nothing, well, then it is going to be very difficult to just make yourself to love another person. There must be something over there, electricity, whatever name you want to give it, which makes you to pull these two people together. And then there's a possibility of working on it, and there's also a possibility of destroying it. That's definitely, as we all know, the case sometimes. I must say, and that sounds a little harsh, but I want to be honest, I once discussed that also with some psychologists in the world of marriage. How many people really marry their absolute soulmate is probably very minimum. Most people don't marry the soulmate. They may marry one of them, while there may be another one which would have been better, right? But nobody knows. Then, in that case, there's more work to be done. More homework in the sense of, okay, so this is not my absolute soulmate, but I have enough in common with her or with him, and we have certain things which we feels very strongly about. Now we have to develop that and make that into a loving relationship. And basically, this is what a good marriage should be doing. You know, to get married is very easy. To stay married is a much harder task. I'm 52 years married, and I know what I'm speaking about. It is far from easy. After all, you are married with another person who perhaps is very different from you, and very often you only find out later in life, and not when passion is still very high when you're young. And when you get older and there are other values now, that you suddenly realize, hey, the person is a little different, but I am also a little different to that person. Then, and that is, I think, what is beautiful about the Jewish tradition is, if it doesn't work and it only hurts, there is a concept of divorce. The Catholic Church made an enormous mistake not to allow this to happen, and they pay a very heavy price for it. A lot of things go wrong because of that. There is at least a healthy approach of saying, if it really doesn't go and both people feel miserable, or something happens in the marriage which makes it impossible to continue, then there is a concept of a get. Then there's a concept of divorce, which then needs to be done, if possible, to be done in a respectful way. It doesn't have to come and blow up altogether when everybody else gets hurt. And then obviously there are the children. If there are young children that's still at home, you have to think about that. Is it worthwhile to keep the marriage together? Is it possible to keep it together, or is it impossible? And then what are the right conditions under which we separate and still try to make our children as happy as possible? This is far from easy. Sometimes you have to stay together, if it is possible, just for the sake of the children. But then you have to keep on speaking together, trying to be nice to each other, even if there is no real love there, but at least there is a respect there. But in case its respect is no longer possible, then the divorce is really the best way out, and you can continue with your life. And that is also very important, also for the children, because if the children see that their parents are in a very bad relationship, it hurts the children probably more than when they would separate. I am reminded here of the famous Gemara in Eruvin, Yud Gimel Amud Beit, 13b, where there's this famous, incredible story about Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, who are discussing the question, what is better, for man to be born and not to be born? Right? And for years they are discussing that. I would have loved to be in that discussion and hear what they said, because the Talmud doesn't say a word about it. But then on the end they come to the conclusion, a very strange story, that the majority is of the opinion it is better that it's better for men not to be married. However, says the Gemara, now that you are born, make the best out of it. Yeah, you have to look into your deeds and make the best out of it. I would say that this is also true in the case of marriage. In other words, the question would then be in the Gemara, what is better, to be married or not to be married, right? So perhaps from one point of view, Beit Shammai would say it is perhaps better not to be married. Also, it seems that Beit Hillel would more be able to say that, but that is a story on its own. But there is the moment where you have to say, okay, this is what it is. I will look into my best deeds. I am born, I'm married, and there is no real reason to step out of that marriage, even when that marriage is not so easy. And you have still young children. Makes a big difference if you have young children or you have older children, or when the children are married. Then you have to make the best out of it. I get the impression that most people in this world, including in the Orthodox world, are living that kind of a marriage. There are very few people who are in love in the same way as they were the first day, and still are so terribly excited about each other. That doesn't happen much. Halloween that we would be able to experience that, but you can still make a very nice life out of it, even when that quality is not always there.